The Vindictive had been dead in space for 3 days. Captain Raven Kolowitz pressed her palm against the bridge's main console, feeling the subtle vibration. That meant life support was still functioning barely. Around her, the skeletal crew of 12 moved through their routines with the practiced efficiency of people who knew they were already ghosts. Emergency lighting cast everything in bloody shadows, and the air tasted of recycled fear. Captain, Communications Officer Nick's Torino's voice cracked like old leather. We're picking up massive hyperspace signatures. 37, no, 41 contacts. Coming out of jump at the system's edge, Kolowitz didn't move from her position. She'd been expecting this moment for the better part of a year. Ever since the deep space relay stations had gone silent one by one. Ever since the outer colonies had stopped answering their calls. The Vindictive was officially a research vessel, part of humanity's first tentative steps beyond the solar system. Unofficially, it was a gunboat masquerading as a science ship, armed with experimental weapons that violated 6 different interstellar treaties. Not that anyone was left to enforce those treaties anymore. Configuration, she asked. Torino's fingers danced across his console. Heavy cruisers, unknown design, but the energy signatures are. Captain, these aren't from any species in our databases. Mass displacement suggests they're each 3 times the size of a human dreadnought. Weapons Officer Dante Grimm looked up from his station. His scarred face showed no emotion, but his knuckles were white where they gripped his chair. Shall I warm up the railguns? Not yet. Kolowitz finally turned, her gray eyes scanning the bridge crew. These people had volunteered for a 5-year research mission. Instead, they'd become the unwitting vanguard of humanity's first real war. Helm, can we break orbit without being detected? Pilot Iris Cage shook her head. Engines are still offline. Even if we could repair them, any movement would light us up on their sensors like a flare in a coal mine. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of failing systems. Through the main viewport, Earth hung below them like a blue marble, utterly defenseless. Humanity's greatest achievement had always been their ability to spread across the galaxy, but that same dispersal had made them vulnerable when the attacks began. Each world had fallen in isolation, cut off from reinforcement, from coordination, from hope. Now Earth was next, and the only thing standing between 41 alien warships and 8 billion humans was one damaged research vessel with an experimental weapons array, and a crew that had already died 3 times over in their own minds. Long-range sensors are picking up more contacts, Torino reported, his voice steady now with the peculiar calm that comes with accepting the inevitable. These are smaller fighters, maybe hundreds of them. Kolowitz walked to the viewport and placed both hands against the reinforced transparistell, turned slowly beneath them, unaware that its children scattered among the stars had already been systematically exterminated. The governments down there were probably still debating whether the radio silence from the colonies was a technical problem or a political one. Captain, came the voice of Chief Engineer Miravas from the engine room, transmitted through the comm system. I've got an idea. It's probably going to kill us all, but it might work. I'm listening. The hyperspace jump damaged our primary reactor containment, right? Well, what if instead of trying to fix it, we make it worse? A lot worse. Turn the entire ship into a directed fusion bomb. The bridge crew exchanged glances. It was exactly the kind of insane plan that might actually work. How much damage could we do? Kolowitz asked. Voss's laugh was bitter. Properly directed, we could take out maybe a third of their fleet before the blast dissipates. But Captain, there wouldn't be enough left of us to identify with a microscope. Kolowitz looked back at Earth one more time. Somewhere down there, children were playing in parks. Lovers were making promises they intended to keep. And old people were tending gardens they'd never see bloom again, unless someone made a choice that would echo through the vacuum of space. Oh, Hans, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's intercom. We have a decision to make. The alien fleet moved with predatory patience, their ships arranged in a formation that spoke of countless previous conquests. From the Vindictive's position in high orbit, they looked like metallic wasps, all curves and angles that hurt to look at directly. Each vessel pulsed with an inner light that shifted through colors human eyes weren't designed to process. They're broadcasting something, Torino announced. Universal Translation Matrix is working on it. The main screen flickered to life, revealing something that made several crew members step backward involuntarily. The alien creature's face, if it could be called a face, was a writhing mass of tentacles surrounding a cluster of eyes that moved independently of each other. When it spoke, the translation came through in a voice like grinding glass. Inferior mammals. Your kind has spread like a plague across 17 systems. We are the Netherum Collective, and we have come to perform the necessary sterilization. Your resistance in the outer worlds was noted, but brief. Captain Kolowitz stepped forward, her command presence filling the bridge despite their hopeless situation. This is Captain Raven Kolowitz of the Earth Defense Ship Vindictive. You are in violation of the aliens' laughter was the sound of tearing metal. Defense ship, your vessel reads as a research platform. Your weapons are laughably primitive. Your people below remain unaware of their approaching extinction. We offer you the honor of witnessing their purification before your own dissolution. 3 of the alien fighters detached from the main formation and began accelerating toward Earth's upper atmosphere. They moved like liquid mercury, impossibly fast and completely silent. Each was roughly the size of a human corvette, but their energy signature suggested firepower that could glass continents. Weapons online. Kolowitz barked. Grimm's hands flew across his console, railguns charging, particle beam array coming online. But Captain, at this range, fire when ready. The Vindictive had been built as a research vessel, but her weapons were cutting-edge prototypes that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. The first railgun salvo launched tungsten projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed, while the particle beam array concentrated enough energy to melt through an asteroid in seconds. The lead alien fighter simply wasn't there when the weapons arrived. It had shifted position without appearing to move, as if space itself had bent around it. The second fighter absorbed the particle beam with what looked like contempt, its hull glowing brighter before returning. Fire! The return shot struck the Vindictive's starboard weapons pod and tore it completely away. Atmosphere vented in a glittering cloud of ice crystals, and the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Emergency klaxons screamed as damage control teams rushed to seal the breach. Engineering, report. Kolowitz demanded. Hull breach on. Decks for through 6. Voss's voice crackled through the comm. We've lost the secondary reactor and about 30% of our offensive capability. But Captain, I'm reading something interesting in their engine signatures. Talk to me. They're using some kind of space folding drive for those impossible maneuvers. But there's a pattern to it, a mathematical constant that governs when and how they can bend space. Give me the minutes and I can predict their movement. The 3 fighters had reached Earth's atmosphere and were beginning what looked like strafing runs across the Pacific Ocean, even from orbit. The detonations were visible as brilliant flashes of light. Each blast was vaporizing millions of gallons of seawater, sending massive steam clouds into the atmosphere. They're not targeting cities, Torino observed. They're targeting the ocean. Kolowitz felt ice in her veins as she understood. They're boiling the seas, creating a greenhouse effect. They want the planet intact but sterile. The main alien fleet was advancing now, their formation shifting into what was clearly a planetary bombardment pattern. More fighters were detaching, dozens of them, each capable of turning a city into ash. Captain, Voss's voice came through the comm again. I've got their movement algorithm, and I've got an idea for the reactor overload. That's even crazier than the first one. I'm listening. What if we don't use the ship as a bomb? What if we use it as a bullet? Kolowitz stared at the tactical display, where red icons representing enemy vessels were converging on the small blue dot. That represented Earth. A plan was forming in her mind, not a good plan. Not a plan with any reasonable chance of success, but the kind of plan that desperate people make when everything else has already been taken away. All hands, battle stations, she announced. We're going to ram the largest ship in their formation. The bridge fell silent except for the sound of weapons charging and the steady beep of incoming enemy contacts. Outside the viewport, Earth continued its slow rotation, beautiful and doomed and utterly dependent on 12 humans in a damaged ship, who had just decided to pick a fight with the entire Netherum Collective. The Vindictive's remaining engines coughed to life, and the ship began its final approach. The enemy command ship was a kilometer-long nightmare of organic curves and metallic spines, its hull rippling with bioluminescent patterns that suggested it was as much living creature as spacecraft. As the Vindictive closed distance, more details became visible through the main viewport weapon ports that dilated like pupils, armor plating that shifted and flowed like liquid, and sensor rays that tracked their approach with predatory interest. Incoming transmission from the command ship, Torino announced. They want to talk. Put them through. The alien commander that appeared on screen was different from the first larger, with more tentacles arranged in what might have been decorative patterns. When it spoke, its translated voice carried notes of curiosity rather than contempt. Curious mammals, your vessel approaches us with weapons powered, but engines failing. Do you believe this is courage, or have you simply malfunctioned? Kolowitz stepped closer to the screen. I believe this is what happens when you underestimate humans. We have a saying, never corner something meaner than you. The alien's tentacles writhed in what might have been amusement. Your species fascinated us during our cleansing of your outer colonies. Such creativity in your methods of dying. But this gesture is meaningless. Your single vessel cannot harm our fleet. Maybe not, Kolowitz replied, but we can sure as hell ruin your day. The transmission cut out, and immediately the Vindictive found herself under fire from 6 different directions. Energy beams that existed in colors beyond human perception lashed across their hull, each impact sending shock waves through the ship's superstructure. The artificial gravity failed completely, leaving the crew floating in 0G as they fought to maintain control. Port armor down to 15%, Grim reported, his voice steady despite the blood floating from a gash on his forehead. Starboard, weapons array is gone. We're losing atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Engineering, how's that reactor overload coming along? Kolowitz demanded. Voss's voice crackled through damaged speakers. Almost ready, Captain. But I need to warn you when this thing goes off. The explosion is going to create a temporary gravitational anomaly. Everything within 1,000 kilometers is going to get pulled in before it gets vaporized, including us, especially us. Through the chaos of battle, Kolowitz could see Earth's surface through the main viewport. The alien fighters had moved beyond the oceans now and were beginning atmospheric burns. Over major population centers, she could see the glow of Sydney burning, then London, then New York. 8 billion people going about their daily lives one moment and facing extinction the next. The Vindictive shuddered as another energy blast tore through their remaining armor. The ship was coming apart around them, held together now by emergency force fields and the desperate will of her crew. But they were still accelerating toward the enemy command ship, still closing distance despite the withering fire. 200 kilometers and closing, Keith reported from the helm. But Captain, at this rate we're not going to survive long enough to get within ramming distance. Then we don't ram them, Kolowitz decided. We detonate early and take as many of them with us as possible. The alien formation was beginning to scatter as they realized what the human ship intended, but they were too close together, too confident in their superiority to react quickly enough. The Vindictive was inside their formation now, surrounded by ships that each outgunned her 100 to 1. All hands, this is the captain, Kolowitz announced over the intercom. It has been an honor serving with you. Engineering, initiate. Reactor overload in 10 seconds. Captain, wait. Torino's voice was urgent. I'm picking up new contacts at the edge of the system. Multiple hyperspace signatures. Coming in fast. The tactical display updated to show over 300 new contacts jumping into normal space at the system's edge. But these weren't more Netherim ships. The energy signatures were different. The configurations unfamiliar, but somehow more elegant, more purposeful. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, Torino continued. Universal Translator is working. Captain, it's a warning to all Netherim forces. They're ordering them to cease hostilities immediately. The alien commander's face reappeared on the main screen, but now his tentacles were writhing in what was clearly agitation. Impossible. The Corvani were destroyed 1,000 cycles ago. Their empire fell to our cleansing. A new voice cut through the transmission deeper, with harmonics that suggested vast intelligence. The Corvani remnant remembers the Netherim collective. We have been hunting you across 16 galaxies. Your genocide ends here. The newcomers were ships of impossible beauty, all flowing lines and crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them. They moved with the grace of dancers and the purpose of predators, accelerating toward the Netherim formation at speeds that defied physics. Captain, Voss's voice came through the comm. Shall I abort the reactor overload? Kolowitz watched as the first Corvani ships engaged the Netherim fighters that had been burning Earth's cities. The alien vessels that had seemed invincible moments before were being systematically dismantled by weapons that operated on principles human science couldn't begin to understand. Negative, she replied. We finished what we started. The Vindictive continued her final approach toward the enemy command ship. even as the space around them erupted into the largest battle the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. The space around Earth transformed into a maelstrom of energy and violence as three different technologies clashed in the void. Corvani crystalline ships fired weapons that seemed to rewrite reality itself, their beams causing Netherim vessels to simply cease existing in neat geometric patterns. The Netherim responded with biological weapons that infected space itself, spreading tendrils of corrupted physics that turned vacuum into something alive and hungry. And in the middle of it all, one damaged human research vessel continued its suicidal charge toward the enemy flagship, 50 kilometers to target, Cage reported, her voice tight with concentration as she navigated through the chaos. Debris from destroyed ships created a deadly obstacle course, while energy discharges from the main battle painted the Vindictive's hull in colors that had no names. The Netherim command ship had stopped firing at them, its attention focused on the Corvani vessels that were methodically dismantling its escort fleet. But as the Vindictive closed to ramming distance, weapon ports along the enemy vessel's hull began to dilate with renewed interest. "They're targeting us again," Grim warned. "All weapon systems are down. We can't fight back. We don't need to fight," Kolowitz replied. "We just need to get close enough." A massive energy discharge from a nearby Corvani vessel washed over both ships, temporarily blinding their sensors. When the interference cleared, the Vindictive was less than 10 kilometers from the Netherim flagship, close enough to see individual details on its living hull. "Captain," Voss's voice crackled through the damaged comm system. "Reactor overload is at 90%. Once I trigger the final sequence, we have maybe 30 seconds before containment fails completely." Through the main viewport, Kolowitz could see the alien command ship surface in horrifying detail. The hull wasn't just organic, it was covered in what looked like faces, thousands of them, each one twisted in an expression of agony. The faces of every species the Netherim had cleansed over the millennia, somehow preserved in their ship's living armor. "My God," Torino whispered, Those are people." The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The Netherim weren't just genocidal, they were incorporating their victims into their ships, turning entire civilizations into components of their war machine. The faces pressed against the hull seemed to track the Vindictive's approach, their silent screams visible through the transparent sections. "All the more reason to end this," Kolowitz said grimly. "Engineering, initiate final overload sequence." Initiating now. 30 seconds and counting. The battle around them had reached a crescendo of violence. A Corvani dreadnought larger than a city was trading fire with 3 Netherim bioships. Each exchange of weapons fired creating shockwaves that could be felt even through the Vindictive's failing hull. Smaller Corvani fighters moved like liquid light, their formations flowing around enemy fire with impossible precision. But the Netherim were adapting. Their ships began to merge together, combining their biological systems into larger, more powerful configurations. What had been 41 separate vessels was rapidly becoming 20, then 15, each one larger and deadlier than before. 20 seconds to detonation, Voss announced. The enemy command ship surface suddenly erupted in weapon fire, every gun port opening simultaneously in a desperate attempt to destroy the approaching human vessel. Energy beams that could melt asteroids struck the Vindictive from dozens of angles, tearing away what remained of her armor and exposing her superstructure to space. The bridge became a hell of sparks and venting atmosphere. Half the crew was already dead or unconscious, floating in the zero-gravity chaos as their ship disintegrated around them. But somehow, impossibly, they were still on course. 10 seconds. Voss's voice was barely audible over the sound of destruction. Kolowitz grabbed onto her command chair and activated the ship's intercom one final time. "This is Captain Raven Kolowitz of the Earth ship Vindictive. To any humans listening, remember that we were here. Remember that we fought back." 5 seconds. The alien command ship's living hull was so close now that individual faces could be distinguished. Men, women, children from 100 different species, all trapped in biological amber, all bearing witness to humanity's final act of defiance. Detonation. In 3, 2, 1. The Vindictive's reactor containment failed in a cascade of nuclear fire that temporarily outshone Earth's sun. The explosion ripped through the Netherim command ship like the fist of an angry god, vaporizing its forward sections and sending shockwaves through its biological systems. The faces trapped in its hull had one moment of release, their expressions changing from agony to something that might have been gratitude, before they dissolved into component atoms. But the blast didn't stop there. The gravitational anomaly Voss had predicted formed at the explosion center, creating a localized black hole that began pulling in everything within 1,000 kilometers. 3 Netherim vessels and 2 Corvani fighters were caught in the gravitational maelstrom, their hulls stretching and distorting before disappearing beyond the event horizon. The command ship, mortally wounded but not destroyed, began to fall toward the artificial singularity. Its remaining crew sent out desperate signals as their vessel's biological systems tried and failed to compensate for the impossible gravitational forces tearing them apart. In the silence that followed the explosion, the remaining combatants paused their battle, awed by the destructive power one small human ship had unleashed. The temporary black hole collapsed after 30 seconds, but the damage was done. The Netherim formation was broken, their command structure decapitated. Their bioships fleeing in panic toward the edge of the system, Earth still turned peacefully below, its population unaware that their continued existence had just been purchased. With the lives of 12 humans in a ship named Vindictive, the Corvani fleet moved to pursue the retreating Netherim. But one crystalline vessel detached from the formation and took up a position near Earth's orbit. On frequencies that human receivers could detect, it began to broadcast a simple message: the debt is acknowledged, the sacrifice is witnessed, the compact is sealed. The retreat of the Netherim fleet proved to be a tactical deception of staggering scope as the Corvani vessels moved to pursue. Space itself began to ripple with new hyperspace signatures, not dozens this time, but hundreds. The Netherim had called in reinforcements from across their empire, turning Earth's star system into the focal point of a galactic war. Corvani command ship Crystal of Endless Light. This is Admiral Zenth Corvos, came the translated transmission from the crystalline vessel that had remained near Earth. We are detecting massive hyperspace distortions throughout the system. The Netherim are bringing their full fleet to bear. The response came from ships emerging from hyperspace at 17 different points around the system's perimeter. Each wave brought larger, more nightmarish vessels than the last. Bioships the size of moons, their surfaces crawling with weapons that pulse like exposed organs. Swarm carriers that disgorged clouds of fighter craft numbered in the tens of thousands. And at the center of it all, something that human sensors could barely process, a Netherim world ship. A hollow planet converted into a mobile weapon of extinction by the eternal crystal. Admiral Corvos whispered, his translation carrying notes of awe and horror. They've brought a planet killer. They mean to sterilize this entire system. The Corvani response was swift and decisive. More of their vessels began dropping out of hyperspace, elegant ships that looked like they'd been carved from single crystals, each one humming with power that operated on principles beyond current understanding. But even their advanced technology seemed inadequate against the sheer scale of the Netherim response. The first engagement began near the orbit of Mars, where a Corvani battle group encountered the leading edge of the Netherim swarm. The space between the two forces lit up with weapons fire that painted the void in impossible colors. Corvani reality warping beams met Netherim bioplasma in collisions that temporarily tore holes in the fabric of space-time itself. A Corvani cruiser, its crystalline hull reflecting starlight like a prism, fired a weapon that simply deleted a section of space where 3 Netherim fighters had been. The enemy craft didn't explode or disintegrate, they simply ceased to exist, leaving behind a perfectly spherical void that collapsed in on itself with a sound like singing crystal. But the Netherim had learned from their earlier encounters. Their bioships began to merge and adapt in real time, their living hulls flowing together like liquid metal to form larger, more resilient configurations. A cluster of 6 Netherim destroyers combined into a single massive organism, its new form, bristling with weapons that had evolved specifically to counter Corvani technology. The casualties began to mount on both sides. A Corvani dreadnought, caught between the Netherim biocruisers, was subjected to some kind of flesh-eating weapon that caused its crystalline hull to sprout tumorous growths. The ship's death scream for Corvani vessels were somehow alive, echoed across multiple dimensions before the craft collapsed into biological components. In response, the Corvani flagship unleashed a weapon that converted matter directly into exotic energy. The beam struck a Netherim swarm carrier and converted its entire mass into a new type of radiation that spread through the enemy formation like wildfire. Dozens of bioships began to glow from within before exploding in chain reactions that lit up half the solar system, but for every Netherim vessel destroyed, more emerged from hyperspace. Their reinforcements seemed endless, drawn from conquest fleets across the galaxy, and slowly, inexorably, they were pushing the Corvani forces back toward Earth. On Earth's surface, the first fragments of the space battle began to rain down, pieces of alien technology, some still fighting microscopic wars against each other, impacted in the Pacific Ocean and the Australian outback. The impacts were detected by human monitoring stations, but the scale of the battle in space remained beyond their comprehension. Corvani forces, this is Admiral Corvos, came to broadcast from the crystalline flagship. The enemy planet killer has achieved optimal firing position. If we cannot stop it in the next 6 minutes, this world and its inhabitants will be reduced to constituent atoms. The Netherim world ship was indeed moving into position, its hollow structure opening like a flower to reveal the planet-cracking weapon within. The energy buildup was visible even from Earth's surface as a new star appearing in the sky, growing brighter by the second. The remaining Corvani fleet, now numbering less than 50 vessels, formed a defensive screen between the world ship and Earth. They knew they couldn't stop the planet killer's primary weapon, but they could at least die fighting. All Corvani vessels, prepare for final assault pattern. Admiral Corvos commanded, "We'll target the world ship's core reactor. Even if we can't destroy it, we might be able to destabilize it long enough for the humans to at least know they were not forgotten." The Corvani ships began their final charge, their crystalline hulls blazing with every weapon they possessed. They moved like a fleet of comets, trailing energy that made space itself sing with harmonics that hurt to perceive. But as they closed distance with the world ship, something unexpected happened. The debris field, where the Vindictive had made her final stand, began to glow with residual energy. The gravitational anomaly that had destroyed the Netherim command ship had left a scar in space-time itself, and now that scar was resonating with the planet killer's charging weapon. "Impossible," Admiral Corvos breathed. "The human vessel's destruction created a quantum resonance cascade. If the world ship fires now, the feedback will." The realization hit both fleets simultaneously. The Vindictive's sacrifice had turned Earth's orbital space into a trap. If the Netherim fired their planet killer, the quantum resonance would reflect the weapon's energy back at the world ship itself, amplified 1,000-fold. But the Netherim were committed to stop now. The world ship's weapon reached critical charge, and space itself began to scream as reality prepared to tear. The ghosts of 12 human crew members were about to have their revenge. On a galactic scale, the Netherim world ship hung in space like a malevolent god, its hollow planet structure fully open to reveal the weapon within a construct of biological engineering and dark physics that pulsed with the power to crack worlds. The energy buildup had reached the point where it was affecting local spacetime, causing stars to flicker and cosmic background radiation to shift into patterns that hurt to observe. Admiral Corvos watched from his flagship's bridge as his tactical computers calculated and recalculated the impossible scenario unfolding before them. The quantum resonance field created by the human ship's destruction was indeed creating a feedback loop with the world ship's charging weapon, but the mathematics were unlike anything in Corvani science. The resonance cascade will amplify the weapon's energy by a factor of 1,200, his science officer reported, her crystalline features reflecting the rainbow of weapon fire still filling space around them. "But Admiral, the humans' quantum signature is unprecedented. Their fusion detonation didn't just create a gravitational anomaly. It fundamentally altered the structure of local space-time. Explain. Somehow, their crude reactor achieved something our most advanced weapons cannot. They've created a permanent scar in reality itself, one that's still spreading. If the world ship fires now, the feedback won't just destroy them, it will create a chain reaction that could affect this entire star system." The implications were staggering. The Vindictive's final act hadn't just been one ship's last stand, it had been a posthumous trap set for an entire invasion fleet. But the trap would only work if the Netherim actually fired their planet killer. "Enemy vessels are pulling back from the world ship," the tactical officer announced. "They're detecting the resonance field. They know what will happen if they fire." Admiral Corvos felt something that might have been hoped for the first time since the battle began. "All Corvani vessels, form up on my position. We're going to force them to fire that weapon." The remaining Corvani fleet, battered and reduced to less than 30 operational ships, began to accelerate toward the world ship. Their crystalline hulls blazed with every weapon they possessed. As they charged directly at the hollow planet's core weapon, the Netherim response was immediate and overwhelming. Every bioship in the system converged on the Corvani formation, their living hulls, sprouting new weapon configurations in real time. The space between the two forces became a hellscape of competing energies, where the laws of physics bent and twisted under the strain of technologies that operated on fundamentally different principles. A Corvani frigate, its hull carved from what looked like a single massive gem, fired a reality deletion beam at a cluster of Netherim fighters. The weapon created a spherical void in space, but before it could collapse, 3 bioships combined their weapons to infect the void with biological matter. The result was a screaming hole in space that began to birth things that shouldn't exist. By the crystal, they're adapting too quickly, Admiral Corvos muttered as he watched his forces being systematically overwhelmed. We need to get closer to the world ship before. His words were cut off as the flagship shuddered under a massive impact. 3 Netherim biocruisers had merged into a single organism, specifically designed to hunt Corvani vessels, their combined form bristling with weapons that targeted the quantum frequencies. That powered crystalline technology, hull integrity, down to 40%, his tactical officer reported. They're using some kind of harmonic weapon that's causing structural resonance. In our crystal matrix, the world ship's planet killer weapon was nearly fully charged now, its energy output visible as a pillar of twisted light that extended from the hollow planet's core to the edge of the system. But the Netherim were clearly hesitating, their sensors undoubtedly detecting the quantum resonance field that would turn their ultimate weapon against them. Admiral, came a transmission from one of the surviving Corvani destroyers. We're not going to make it to the world ship. There are too many of them. It was then that something impossible happened. New contacts began appearing on the tactical display, not emerging from hyperspace, but materializing directly in normal space around Earth's orbit. At first, Admiral Corvos thought they were more Netherim reinforcements, but the energy signatures were completely different. They were human ships, not sleek research vessels or military cruisers, but converted civilian craft, industrial ships, even what appeared to be modified passenger liners, hundreds of them, emerging from behind the moon and from the shadow of Earth itself. Their hulls were covered in hastily mounted weapons, their designs crude but functional. Impossible, the Netherim world ship commander's translated voice echoed across all frequencies. The human homeworld showed no signs of military preparation. These vessels should not exist, but they did exist, and they were accelerating toward the battle with the desperate courage of people who had nothing left to lose. Leading them was a ship that Admiral Corvos recognized from his cultural databases, a converted generation ship called the Defiant Hope, its hull scarred from decades of service, while its weapons raised glowing with deadly intent. All alien vessels. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Fleet. Came the transmission from the human flagship. We may not have your fancy technology, but we've got something better. We're fighting for our home. The human fleet spread out in a formation that was tactically unsound by any conventional standard, but which somehow worked. Their ships moved with unpredictable patterns, using strategies that no military academy would teach, but which confused the hell out of both Corvani and Netherim targeting systems. How did they mobilize so quickly? Admiral Corvos wondered aloud. The answer came from the human admiral herself when one of our own ships lit up half the system. In a nuclear fireball, we figured someone was having a bad day. Took us 3 days to strip every civilian vessel in the system and turn them into warships. Not pretty, but they'll fight. The arrival of the human fleet tipped the balance just enough. While the Netherim scrambled to deal with this new threat, the surviving Corvani vessels managed to close distance with the world ship. Their combined firepower struck the planet killer weapon just as it reached critical charge. The weapon fired, its planet-cracking beam lancing toward Earth and struck the quantum resonance field. Left behind by the vindictive sacrifice, reality screamed. The feedback began as a whisper of twisted physics, then built to a symphony of destruction that rewrote the fundamental laws of the local universe. The world ship's planet-killing beam struck the quantum resonance field and reflected back on itself, amplified beyond all calculation by the scar the vindictive had carved in space-time itself. The hollow planet began to tear apart from within, its biological weapons systems trying desperately to contain an energy cascade that operated on principles that creators had never imagined. All ships, clear the blast radius. Admiral Vasquez's voice cut through the chaos as human vessels scattered in every direction. The converted civilian craft moved with desperate speed. Their improvised engines pushed beyond safe limits as their crews fought to escape the expanding zone of destruction. The world ship's death was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. As the reflected energy tore through its biological systems, the countless faces trapped in its living hull, the preserved consciousness of 1,000 extinct species suddenly blazed with light. For one impossible moment, the voices of entire civilizations spoke as one, their combined scream of liberation echoing across dimensions before fading into merciful silence. Admiral Corvo's watched from his damaged flagship as the holoplanet collapsed in on itself, its massive structure folding through dimensions that didn't have names. The implosion created a gravitational shockwave that swept through the Netherim fleet, like the hand of an angry god, crushing bioships that had survived millennia of warfare in seconds. The resonance cascade is spreading, his science officer reported, her crystalline features reflecting the rainbow destruction consuming the enemy fleet. It's following the quantum signatures of all Netherim technology in the system. Every ship they brought is going to be affected. She was right. The quantum feedback was spreading from ship to ship through the biological networks that connected the Netherim fleet. Vessels that had been light years apart when the cascade began were suddenly linked by threads of destructive energy that ignored the laws of physics. One by one, the mighty bioships began to convulse and tear themselves apart from within. The surviving Netherim vessels attempted to flee, their crews broadcasting surrender signals on every frequency they could access. But the quantum cascade was relentless, following them into hyperspace itself and dragging them back into normal space to face their destruction. "This is Netherim Fleet Commander Ganos," came a desperate transmission from one of the few remaining biocruisers. "We yield. We surrender. Call off your weapon." Admiral Vasquez's response was cold as vacuum. "We didn't call it on. And even if we could call it off, why would we? You came here to commit genocide. Now you get to experience extinction firsthand." The last Netherim vessel, a scout ship that had been at the edge of the system when the cascade began, managed to escape into hyperspace, carrying with it the tale of how a single human research vessel had destroyed the greatest invasion fleet in galactic history. As the immediate threat faded, the human and Corvani fleets found themselves alone in a debris field that stretched across half the solar system. The silence was profound, broken only by the steady ping of emergency beacons from damaged ships and the whisper of cosmic radiation through the ruins of the Netherim Armada. "Admiral Vasquez," came Admiral Corvos' transmission, his translated voice carrying notes of profound respect. "The Corvani remnant owes your species a debt that can never be repaid. Your ship Vindictive and her crew saved not just your world, but dealt a blow to the Netherim that will echo across the galaxy. They were good people," Vasquez replied quietly. "They deserve better than dying alone in the dark." "They did not die alone," Admiral Corvos corrected. "They died surrounded by enemies, with their weapons firing and their ship on course for the target. There is no more honorable death for a warrior." Over the following hours, as damage reports came in and rescue operations began, the true scope of what had happened became clear. The quantum resonance cascade had not only destroyed the Netherim invasion fleet, it had created a permanent disruption in local space-time that would prevent any similar technology from functioning in Earth's solar system. Humanity's home had become effectively immune to the weapons that had destroyed so many other worlds. But more than that, the cascade had somehow preserved quantum echoes of every consciousness that had been trapped in Netherim bioships over the millennia. The voices of extinct civilizations whispered through Earth's radio telescopes, carrying fragments of lost knowledge and grateful farewells to the species that had finally given them peace. Captain's log, supplemental, Admiral Vasquez recorded, as her flagship limped back toward Earth's orbital stations. "The Vindictive and her crew of 12 have accomplished something that entire battle fleets could not. They've proven that sometimes the smallest acts of defiance can reshape the universe itself." 3 months later, a memorial was erected in Earth's orbit, a simple structure of metal and crystal built jointly by human and Corvani engineers. At its center was a holographic display showing the names of the 12 crew members who had died aboard the Vindictive, their faces rendered in light that would never fade. But the memorial was more than just a monument to the dead. It was a beacon, broadcasting the story of humanity's first stand against galactic tyranny on frequencies that would reach every corner of known space. The message was simple: delivered in the voice of Captain Raven Kolowitz herself, extracted from the ship's final transmission. To any who would threaten the innocent, remember the vindictive. Remember that sometimes the smallest ship carries the biggest bite. And remember that humans don't just fight for victory. We fight for the right to exist, to dream, to reach for the stars without asking permission from anyone. The Corvani established a permanent embassy on Earth, sharing technology and knowledge with their new human allies. But they also shared something more valuable: the location of other worlds that had survived Netherone cleansing, scattered remnants of civilizations that had been presumed extinct. The galaxy, it seemed, was full of survivors, and now they had proof that even the mightiest tyrants could fall to the fury of those who refused to surrender. In the years that followed, human ships would carry that message to every star system they encountered, along with the quantum signature of the Vindictive's final moment. It became humanity's calling card across the galaxy, not a threat, but a promise. We were here. We fought back, and we're still fighting. The Vindictive had been dead in space for 3 days before she changed the course of galactic history. Her crew of 12 had volunteered for a research mission, and instead became the vanguard of humanity's emergence as a galactic power. They had said Earth wasn't ready for war. They forgot to ask the one human ship already in orbit. They would never make that mistake again.